Hey everyone, Cynics again, and I'm back for some additional bonus content for my Design Lab episode 1. And you can see here I have some art from DeviantArt, and it's by a person named Bomb O. Paul, who was nice enough to share this with me, kind of inspired by Design Lab episode 1. And he actually also agreed to let me do a video critique of this piece, so I'd like to thank him for that, and hopefully I can give him and everyone watching some useful tips and stuff that might help improve your art. So, let's see, first of all, I think the first thing that just jumps out at me is that the background seems very saturated. And let me just check with my color picker. You can't quite see this. But if I go over this stuff and then go over the stuff that's on the robot, which is in the foreground, I noticed that the saturation is actually stronger on the background than it is in most of these colors on the mech itself. So, I don't know if any of you watched the old video I did. Most of the old videos were pretty bad, but I think starting around the time of the Let's Draw Color video, there was some useful stuff in there. And one of the useful things was talking a lot about showing distance and stuff like that. And one of the main ways to show distance is with your saturation. So when you have the background more saturated than the foreground, it tends to fight with the foreground a bit, and this feels kind of flat, and you find that the mech is not popping off the page as much as it should. It's kind of competing with the background. So the first thing I'll do, and I'll just kind of do the quick video kind of style paint over, is lighten up the background. So let's see, I'll try to keep it somewhat like this. It's not going to be perfect just because well, I'm doing this fast and I don't want to get into all the details, but I'm just kind of trying to prove points where I can. So there we go, and like that. And now you should already notice that the mech feels to be jumping forward off the background a lot more. It's a lot more readable. It's not competing with the background and stuff like that. So, the other thing about the presentation, and oops, like I kind of can't really show off what I was talking about now, but let me go back to the old one. The other thing about the presentation is that this text is kind of clashing. That's kind of a general typography thing, and it's kind of a whole different skill set, and you might not be used to it just like if you're drawing and painting, but you don't really want clashing text to be like next to each other. I mean, two different styles of text, because it's kind of jarring a little bit. It kind of looks awkward. So if you're going to do text, you generally want to keep the text to be the same thing. Especially when they're right next to each other. So you can't even see this right now, so that's kind of sad. Let me select the color and just kind of draw it back in my hand. But yeah, 1, 9, and then say maybe the other part was just in here. And it would look a lot nicer if they matched, but that's just kind of a minor thing. So, working my way closer to the mech itself, this figure here, it's always a good idea to throw in a figure. Just to give scale and puts the thing more in real life. It's more relatable when there's a figure there. But I would say it's usually a good idea to have the figure facing what you want people to be looking at. You can see right here, I think he has the figure facing away, and it kind of makes your eye as the viewer go in the same way that his view is going, which is kind of off the page. And aside from that, the anatomy is a little off with the head being really high above the shoulders. So I'll just kind of fix that a little bit. The head should be a lot lower, maybe somewhere in there. And we can pretend that he's facing the robot. And I'm not going to change the rest, but oops, yeah, it's good enough. And he also feels a little bit off balance. And the same goes for the mech, which is actually my first main crit on the mech itself, in that it feels like it's tilted to, let me get a color out, it feels like it's tilted off to this side. You can see the balance on the legs especially. It feels like it's leaning to this side. And that's something that's really noticeable when you have something like a heavy mech, which is supposed to show off a lot of weight, and it's supposed to feel like it's, you know, really heavy and if you have it feeling like it's tilted or slightly leaning to the side, it really ruins that atmosphere of that weight. So that's something that you should watch out for. I think you might be able to fix it just by moving this leg in more, but who knows? If you can just move this one in slightly closer, that might be enough to make it feel more weighted. I don't remember exactly what the foot looked like, but let's just, draw some stuff. Okay, so it's not perfect, but, at least you get what I'm talking about in that the legs need to feel like they're weighted. And actually, those double jointed legs are a good way to make a robot feel like it has a lot of weight. Obviously, thin legs, like I like to do, they don't really physically look like they should be carrying weight. But when you have things kind of coiled up, like the legs jointed back and forward, it feels like there's a lot of potential energy, and that it's kind of stuck down there, and it feels more weighty. So anyway, this guy was kind of leaning off to the side as well. So I'll just kind of maybe, I don't know, fix it slightly. But yeah, it's not perfect, obviously. Oops. Yeah, that's, you know, I'm gonna waste too much time on this because I can't really see. I'm kind of zoomed out pretty far. But let's just say he's balanced now. Somewhat balanced. So, let's see, what we messed around with. So we made his head shorter and changed the background so the robot pops more into the foreground and did some minor stuff like that. So what else can I do? Well, when I look at the robot itself, I say the line weight is kind of the biggest problem with the rendering. Generally, yeah, like I talked about doing stuff with a heavy black brush, or lots of big shapes and stuff. But you also have to keep in mind the kind of lighting of things, and that if you have like basically dark lines all around, it'll make something look very flat. Whereas if the dark lines are only in one part, this suddenly feels more 3D, like this box is coming forward. So you have to watch your line weight to kind of make sure you're balancing that stuff out. In fact, around things that are like paneled, you probably don't even need any line weight, so you can just kind of ditch it altogether and stuff like that. And especially on these legs, you can see the shadows should be probably on this side, but you have these dark lines on the top and stuff like that. You probably don't need all these thick lines. So it's just something to look out for, really varying your line weight. Um, not getting too thick with all the black and everything like that. But you certainly can throw in a lot of black. For instance, this part's kind of in shadow, so you can just black it out if you wanted. That's kind of optional, like stuff like this. You can really pop into the blackness, if you feel like it. But whatever. So let's see, what else we got. There's some glass at the top. Glass is always fun to render, but you probably don't need any line at all to show that it's glass. Instead, since it's glass, you can just kind of show a highlight around the top area or something. And then suddenly that's glass, and that reads as glass. So let's see, there's minor changes, but it looks a little more complete and stuff. So once again, I think most of the problems revolve around the line art and just being too thick and heavy. But let's see. Okay, here's one other thing I can point out. You might notice here that this shape in here actually has a highlight on the top and a shadow on the bottom side. So that would lead me to believe that it is a curved surface with a highlight and a shadow. But if you look at these bands right here, you can notice that they're both straight up and down. So you always want to be defining your form with stuff like that. So if I can get rid of them real fast, let's see if I can. So you should be using them to define the form. So maybe they're going forward, curving, whatever, stuff like that. It's just kind of a minor thing, but you'll find that it helps your work look more proper if you're doing stuff like that. So let's see, just kind of thinning lines out. You can use lighter brushes. Doesn't have to be all black, black, black. Um, and yeah, it wouldn't be that hard for you to go back over this and kind of lighten things up and fix the line weights in certain places and kind of bring it out a bit more. Um, I guess you don't have a glow brush. I'm not sure if you use Painter for this or not. But the glow brush should probably do a good job at really bringing these lights out. I'm guessing they're lights. Let me see if I could actually do that real fast. Let's see what happens. So, I'm going to put them back to white. Since they're, oh yeah, okay, that's a good thing to point out. Let me show this. Since they're, I think, supposed to be light sources, you don't want any red or kind of light colors in the center. The center should be pretty much just white since it's a light source. And instead the color that comes off the light source is shown in the area around the light source. So for instance, let's see if this works. So there and there, and suddenly that's red light, and that's a glowing red light versus, just having dark red. So you can see a lot of minor changes like that. I'm kind of rambling a bit because I'm doing this live and it's requiring some effort, some mental effort. But I hope this was a little bit helpful. And that's it for this first part of my bonus content. Once again, I'd like to thank Bomb Paul for being nice enough to let me crit this in front of everyone. I know no one, or a lot of people don't like getting crits, but hopefully you can appreciate that being able to recognize things is the most important part of getting better at art. It's not so much the mechanical side or your muscle control. It's all about just having the eyes to recognize stuff, and nothing will help you get better more than having someone else point out things and give you crits, because that's where you learn, hopefully, the most. So, thank you again, and I'll move on. Oh wait, there is one last thing. I almost forgot. I wanted to point out something about tangents. And what are tangents, you might ask? Well, that is these lines that seem to line up. So you may notice these lines in the background are actually kind of on the same or almost the same degree as the lines of the arm. So that's kind of jarring to the eye. I don't have an exact scientific reason as to all the ins and outs of why it's a bad idea, but it just kind of distracts the eye and it looks a bit awkward. It's kind of off-putting, so just wanted to get rid of those tangents, and they're always something to watch for when you're doing art. So remember to watch your tangents. They sneak up on you and they can get you. But anyway. So, here we go, another part of my bonus content. Some of the best comments I got were that this robot we made looks a lot like Hulk Hogan. So I thought it would be amusing to kind of try to really play that up and make it look even more like Hulk Hogan. So you can see how easy it is to kind of edit designs once you've already established them. You have all those details and stuff, and you can just color pick from around the area, and that'll make it very easy to kind of change the forms, change the shapes without having to put in too much effort. So you can see I kind of made this things that used to be the legs. I'm making them look like a boa, like Hulk Hogan would have, a kind of a feather boa, although it's made of metal and it's kind of a robotic thing. But that's what that's supposed to be. And I got rid of some of the beard around his chin just to kind of make it look more like that facial hair that Hulk Hogan would have, as I remember him from the 80s when I possibly watched wrestling for a little bit. I don't really remember that well. So here I am, giving him some semblance of a nose, or something like a nose, still trying to keep things very mechanical and make it look like very rough, kind of very loose. Like not exactly a nose, but something like a nose. And here I am doing some stuff on the bottom part. I wanted to give him something down here, so I kind of gave this mechanical chin, and that's kind of moving away from the face side of things. It's more of a mechanical touch, but you can see how it can be a chin. And some teeth here, which are just kind of amusing to me. Um, but I think around this point, I started moving a bit away from the whole Hulk Hogan thing, and I'm just kind of experimenting with the design and having fun with it. So that's kind of a good thing to do when you have a design is just go back in and kind of switch it up, make it into something else. You already have all this work put in, so it doesn't really take any effort. It's a lot of fun, so I'm just kind of now I'm just experimenting completely. I don't know what I want to do. Kind of feel like getting rid of the whole face thing, so I put in these secondary dots and the light sources rather, and I get rid of some of the mustache stuff. And suddenly it doesn't look like a face anymore, or it looks a lot less like a face. And now, in my head, I'm picturing that this is the back of some kind of hovering vehicle, whereas before it was like the hovering face of Hulk Hogan. You know, maybe it hovers around town, intimidating people. But now it's just some kind of giant hovering craft, and I drew in these little people. Maybe there's some nerds or scientists that are experimenting with this, and this is their prototype. Maybe it's a prototype school bus, and it's gonna deliver kids to school and all that good stuff. And I wish that was my school bus. But oh well.